for that. Again, live pictures there from Tahrir Square. That's the street where the Egypt Museum is. And we're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen there, pro-Mubarak supporters throwing stones at the anti-government demonstrators who are inside Tahrir Square. We spoke to one of them earlier inside Tahrir Square, and she said that many people around her had been injured. There were no ambulances, and that basically people were desperate to get out of the square, desperate to get treatment for their injuries, but no one was around to help. And all this is happening, again, as our correspondent just mentioned there, again seeing their pictures from the roof of people, in fact, now on top of buildings overlooking Tahrir Square and throwing whatever they can find, whether it's whether it's stones or even chairs. Our correspondent was telling us earlier. Now, it's still unclear whether these people on top of these buildings are pro or anti-government supporters. We've got Jackie Rowland on the line with us, live with us. Jackie, what are you seeing from where you are, from your vantage point?
We're seeing, as you said, Polly, and the fact that this rooftop, in fact, the rooftops of 2 buildings have now been occupied.
And Jackie, we're just seeing that army vehicle now trying to make into Tahrir Square. I think it's being driven this time, not just pushed, with some pro-government supporters on top of it, and it seems to have entered the square. We can't see it anymore, but just a second ago, we saw it there. There it is. It is approaching towards the square with some pro-government supporters there. Certainly very worrying, Jackie.
A mobile front line. They've been standing behind them and have been lobbing projectiles over towards the anti-government demonstrators in the square. And this is really a scene that's carrying on. This is essentially a scene that's repeating in the approach roads all over the square. Now,
the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon saying that any violence against peaceful demonstrations is unacceptable. We're seeing what looks like a building on fire there on the left-hand side of your screen. On the left-hand side also of your screen are the pro-government supporters, and smoke rising on top of the museum, the Egyptian museum there, that's on the top right of your screen, across the street from where the pro-Mubarak supporters are. And this is a building where I think we can vaguely see soldiers standing on top there of the roof watching these events as they unfold. There's been more international reaction coming in. The State Department just a moment ago saying that it reiterates its call on all were suddenly charged by men on horseback and camels, as you can see on those pictures. Those are earlier pictures from Cairo. Protesters were scattered and some were trampled underfoot. Gangs of thugs armed with batons, sticks and knives were reported to be roaming the crowd. Now, some in the crowd were throwing stones at each other. Fistfights broke out nearby. As battles unfolded, the call to prayer was made and hundreds of men knelt down in the square and started to pray. Just after 1400 hours GMT, the first gunshots were reported. One of our correspondents on the ground said he heard shots near the Egyptian Museum. We also heard those shots. The government said that troops were ordered to fire into the air to try and disperse the crowds. Well, since then, green trucks have appeared to form a roadblock barricade. Protesters huddled behind them to shield themselves as hail of stones and missiles were hurled at them from the other direction. This is a live shot of Tahrir Square where it's now nighttime. We are going to be speaking to one of the anti-government activists who's inside that square right now. His name is Wahil Khalil. He's in the southern part of Tahrir. Wahil, good to have you with us.
We thought the guarantees and safeguards with and the military establishment will offer us. But now with what has been happening and still happening at the Tahrir Square now, I guess this is not an option for most of them. Probably a point of no return for the two sides. A massive popular movement which cannot be matched and will not be undermined by minor pro-Mubarak administrators, where, as I said, NDP thugs and
dose the flames. On Saturday, the museum, which is home to some of the world's most important artifacts, was targeted by looters. Nothing was stolen, but items were damaged. The army then moved in to protect the building after residents in the area begged them for help. Those are the live pictures from Tahrir Square now.
They were firing warning shots into the air. Some of the shots they were firing were high caliber. We're talking about heavy fire. At the moment, the anti-government demonstrators are holding the area around Tahrir Square. However, under the flyover, which is close to the square, there is evidence of hundreds of people that we think are pro-government supporters who are gathering in that area. In the last few minutes, we've also seen army reinforcements coming in. We're talking about personnel, basically buses coming in, bringing army personnel into the area.
How far away would these pro-government demonstrators be from where the military was positioned close to Qasr al-NILE?
Very close. In fact, there are about 3 tanks which are hovering close to those pro-government protesters. They have been, we see them there, then they disappear again. And also the tank which earlier fired the warning shot, that was also close by. It's a very confusing situation, David, because you also have onlookers. On the bridges, you have many spectators, but amongst the spectators, there are also rock throwers. And
this is the Egyptian Museum, top right, Tahrir Square, and this is how it all unfolded on Wednesday. Yeah, this is where the pro-government crowds moved up and were pushed back into that area there. You can see just to the east of the museum, because this is actually on the eastern bank of the Nile. The Nile just at the bottom of your square with the 2 main bridges, October 6 and Qasr al-NILE, leading into that particular area. The violence continuing at an intersection near the Egyptian Museum, as you can see there. Let's reflect on events with Alan Fisher.
The clashes go on. Gunfire continues to pierce the air in Cairo. The army has moved in to keep both sides apart, reportedly pushing pro-Mubarak supporters further and further from the square. Egypt's new Prime Minister, speaking on state television, says there will be an investigation into the fighting on Wednesday and the ongoing violence.
I promise and greatly stress that things like this will not be passed over. Who are the people who entered the square, and who planned it? And if it was not planned, who guided them to that area?
These men are pro-Mubarak supporters, caught and placed in a makeshift prison in the square. These are the ones behind all of this, says the man.
This is not just a revolt to topple a regime. Yeah. This is a revolt for our dignity. We need justice. We need to punish those who committed atrocities and crimes against humanity in this square.
I'm ready for battle.
This helmet is something I bought from home, from a neighbour.
These pictures give some idea of the devastation in Liberation Square, where the fighting has been fiercest. The anti-Mubarak protesters say they're not moving. They're staying, no matter what comes next. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
But also was a center of providing support for the protesters. Releasing statements, assembling the lists of people injured and killed, collecting medical supplies to send it to the sit-in and that kind of stuff. So the center is busy at any final day with many of its employees, mostly lawyers, but also many volunteers. We don't know who was arrested. The first thing they did when they invaded the place was to take all mobile phones. So we have no idea if everyone there was arrested or only some, if they had a list of people that they wanted to pick up, or they just arrested people at random.
Sharif Kaddu says the people are proud. They held their ground under the Tahrir brutal assault last night. They vow to stay in Liberation Square until liberation. S. Sirgani says, obviously, the government doesn't care about tourism. It's inciting violence against foreigners through state media. And Tahir Imran has a rather grim message. He says, it used to be easy to manage 1 million people, but difficult to kill them. It's now easy to kill 1 million, but difficult to manage.
This is Al Jazeera with more special continuing coverage of the battle for Egypt. Skirmishes continue throughout the morning, but the pro-democracy barricades keep the sides apart and hold firm. An apology from the Prime Minister, who says he'll find those responsible for the 24 hours of violence that left up to 7 dead.